Portion of this video is sponsored by Great Toothpaste. Alright, so this is my iPhone 12 Pro Max. It was a phone that I used every day for a year until the iPhone 13 Pro Max. We've got a final review of this phone, which I'll link down below, but I like this phone a lot. It served me well for the past year, and now that the 13 series is here, it does seem like not all that much is changing. So that kind of got me thinking about what you should upgrade to, regardless of what phone you're using, whether or not the iPhone 13 is actually going to be worth it. And for most people, I'm not entirely sure it is. So the goal here, this whole exercise, is to get as many new Apple products as possible for that price point of $1,100, which again is the price of the 13 Pro Max, at least this starting off. So, and to start, you are going to need a new iPhone. It's time for an upgrade. It's obviously why you're here. This is like home base for all of their Apple products. It's the hub. And let's face it, your phone is really most people's main device for everything. For camera, for communication, for interaction, probably for friends and social stuff. So with all the hype for the iPhone 13, it's pretty easy to forget about the least expensive of the iPhone bunch. Ladies and gentlemen, old faithful home button himself, Mr. iPhone SE. So the iPhone SE is $399 brand new. Now you're not getting the latest and greatest flashy design. It's still got that home button. It's got the massive bezels all around. Like I said, Touch ID instead of Face ID. It's sort of the legacy iPhone of the past in a lot of ways. But where it counts, I think the iPhone SE packs incredible value even now. All right, so next, you want to get a new Apple Watch, right? Having an Apple Watch isn't necessarily a necessity, but it's like a nice thing to enjoy if you're in the Apple ecosystem, and I dig using mine. And for $279, you get a brand new 40mm Apple Watch SE. And this is actually a brand new SKU from earlier this year, so even though it's not like the top of the line Series 7, with its all new squared off, sorry, with its bigger face, it's still a new Apple Watch that Apple is selling. And with those two products, maybe you're gonna want some AirPods. So I gotta include the $159 first-gen AirPods. And these are the basic, the OG AirPods without wireless charging case, but you get all the other sort of solid AirPods features. So and finally, now that you are all kitted out with your iPhone accessories, you are gonna need an iPad. And that's where this pretty awesomely priced $329 new iPad comes in. I believe it's actually the 9th gen, but Apple's just calling it the iPad. This is probably not the iPad you're gonna buy if you wanna like do a solid flex, but for the price and what you are getting, the value is unbeatable. It's got a smart connector, so you can use the first gen Apple keyboard, you use a first gen Apple Pencil. It's got that new ultra wide camera, so you can use center stage. It's got a bunch of awesome features in it, and it does still have the Touch ID home button, so it might not look like the newest iPad, but it'll perform like one of the newer iPads. So these are all the products that you can get, and if you can do the math in your head and what you're saying, that's the total of $1,166. I am indeed $66 overall. But for the sake of argument, let's say there's a sale on AirPods, like Verizon was selling them for like $100. Or maybe you get a carrier deal on the iPhone SE. There are ways to easily get the price down to $1,100 exactly. Sales and promos are happening kind of all the time. We'll link some of the best ones as of this publishing date also down below. So the big product that I didn't mention in this Apple kit is a computer, a desktop or a laptop. And on the laptop side, they are generally pretty expensive. Apple makes amongst the best laptops going, but that does not mean they are immune from problems. And that's where something like Grey Ducky by Great Toothpaste, which is not for your teeth, comes into play. So what you get with the Grey Ducky is actually a little toggleable. You can move it up and down, is what it boils down to. So you can use it like a regular 2-prong outlets, but you can also have the grounding option there as well, which means if you get a power surge, it's going to be grounded and not go into your laptop. And best of all, it actually clips right onto that power brick that you are already using that came with your laptop. Doesn't matter if you've got an M1 MacBook or an Intel MacBook, it'll work with either of those. So if you want to check out Grey Ducky or pick one up or back them on Kickstarter, it's probably a good idea if you've got a MacBook. I'll put a link to it down below. So now that we've got all these devices. I think the question is it worth it? And why get the more expensive options at all? Now, of course, there's a difference between the features of the higher end and the low end, but it might not be as big a difference as you think. So inside, you start to see some of the weaker points of the iPhone SE as well. Like the battery is just not great. You're not getting 5G inside as well, but it does get you through a day, and that's going to be about it. So the iPhone 13 Pro Max, on the other hand, seems to have pretty solid battery life. It's bigger this time around. The A15 is more efficient. It's not as great as the iPhone 11 Pro that came out a couple years ago, but still way better than the iPhone SE. So that's a weak point there. But one of the strong points of the iPhone SE is the processor. It's running the A13 inside, so it's only 2 generations behind what the 13 Pro Max had. And considering the smaller LCD display, less cameras, Touch ID, this processor totally flies. And more importantly, it means you're gonna be getting software updates for years to come. So basically, if the iPhone 11 is going to get updates, so is the iPhone SE, because they share that same processor. So out of all the features of the iPhone SE, this is the one that makes the price point of the SE a big deal, at least for me. You can confidently buy it today, know it's going to work well and be supported in 3 years, if not more. So the iPhone SE does have quite a bit of differences compared to the latest, I guess, greatest iPhone. But the iPad is kind of a different story, at least in some ways. So I think a lot of us were expecting Apple to revolutionize iPad software when the latest iPad Pro hardware was released. They didn't. It's got amazing mini LED display on the larger model with near OLED-like specs. It's got the beastly M1 chip inside. Apple made the Magic Keyboard with trackpad support. Everything was leading up to Apple updating iPad OS and taking the hardware to the next level. But obviously WWDC came and went. And the software we got with it was...
Now you can place widgets among the apps on your home screen.
Widgets anywhere. Granted, it's still possible that Apple will update the software, but until that day comes, overall experience between the really top-notch iPad Pro and the latest iPad is pretty close to identical. The iPad's got a really nice looking 10.2-inch display. It's still got that home button there, which has Touch ID. It's got the A13 Bionic inside, but when you use both of them, you realize there are only really specific tasks where the Pro is going to make a lick of difference. If you're consuming media, which is really a very iPad thing, then the regular iPad is still absolutely awesome. I'm talking about like watching movies, watching YouTube. If you're gonna answer emails, social media, browse the web, those stuff, they arguably equal to that of the almost triple the price iPad Pro. So when Apple announced the Apple Watch SE, which was the Apple Watch that I got my wife, and she absolutely loves it and adores it, it made a ton of sense for essentially a pared down Apple Watch Series 4. Now look, the Series 7 is the best Apple Watch you can buy, obviously. It's the newest, and it's the best smartwatch out there. But if you hold the SE and the 7 next to each other, you're gonna be hard pressed to see a gigantic difference. Since the 7 did not get its squared off design, they look pretty close to identical. And that's great if you wanna save money. The SE will do basically everything important. Exercise tracking, notifications, basic health tracking, all that stuff can be done there. So the more specific things like always on display or the blood oxygen monitoring that you're gonna get with the Series 7. And for most people, the Series 7 isn't just necessary. And if it wasn't for like my job of testing things and wearing the latest stuff, I probably wouldn't have upgraded even back in the Series 5, and maybe not even the Series 4 before it. These watches got good really fast, and the changes year over year became so minor. So that makes the SE one of the best values out there. All right, so that leaves us with AirPods. So when these first came out, it was really impressive how well they connected to your devices and seamless the experience was. It was really sort of set a new standard for wireless headphones. But there's a lot of competition these days. I mean, you can like look in our storage closet, we've got a bunch of options. And if you're in the Apple ecosystem, there's really nothing better than AirPods. Even after a few years, AirPods are still a really great buy. All right, so that's what I like to call like the Apple ecosystem starter kit. It's everything you need to really get the most out of what Apple has created. But at the same time, like you don't have to break the bank to do it. So that leaves a big question that I kind of asked at the beginning. If you can get all of this for the price of one iPhone 13 Pro Max, why would you buy the most expensive iPhone at all? The only other thing I think Apple could do to make this better is actually just offer that bundle pack, like make this starter kit like a thing. Imagine walking to an Apple store, seeing just a box on the shelf with an iPhone, Apple Watch, AirPods, and an iPad for that low cost, and put that next to the brand new iPhone 13 Pro Max. I bet Apple would sell a ton, but you know, that's just my 2 cents.